So we have already seen that the A value affects your amplitude. The B value affects your period, and you've got formulas for period, 2 pi over B for sine and cos, and pi over B for tangent. And then now we're going to look at our D value. So I'm actually going to skip A and B. If you want to watch them on the internet, I have them from past years where we've done it, but we're a little bit behind in time already. So just a little review. Do you see in this A that you have an A value of 3? That would mean you have an amplitude of 3. So instead of writing a max at 1 and a min at -1, you would have a max at 3 and a min at -3. Period would stay the same, and you'd be able to graph it quickly. The second one, we have a B value. So we can use the formula that your period is always 2 pi over your B value. The second one would change your period. Your amplitude is 1, so it'll still go up to 1 and down to -1. But your period is now 2 pi over 3. The one that we're going to focus on, and the only one that we're going to do here, is C, and look at our D value. So we know outside the function is vertical. This would be a vertical translation. In transformations unit, we would move our graph up 3. So you have all the skills to do this already. You would say, I know what my initial graph is. I know that my regular sine graph, and I'll draw it quickly here. Period of 2 pi divided into 4 equal sections. And my regular sine graph starts in the middle going up, so middle, then max, then middle, then min. There's my regular graph. Some things that I'm going to tell you maybe sometimes to ignore. Okay? I'm going to highlight them. Again, I'm going to ignore this part. I'll show you what it can be really annoying. In fact, for part B, if you watch the video on part B somewhere where I do it, it's super annoying. And I'm also going to ignore this part. It says to graph them on the same grid. If you do that and you're only using pencil, sometimes the graphs gets very busy and it's hard for you to see what actually happened. I think it is more beneficial to graph it separately so you can see what's happening. Okay? Now, our D value, by moving it up 3, we are going to label something on this graph that we haven't talked about yet. And that is, and the shortcut that this is going to do is it's going to change something. I always talk about the middle, not the axes. And the middle has a name. Very fun. The middle of a sine and cosine graph is called the sinusoidal axis. Because it's sort of an axis. We often talk about things going around something, like around an axis. In this situation, your sine graph and cosine graph, that middle value is where it oscillates between. So we call that our sinusoidal axis. And the D value, by moving things up and down, the shortcut is that your D value always changes the sinusoidal axis. So when I go to graph this separately, shifting up 3, I'm going to draw it. I draw it with a red pen, kind of like an asymptote, dotted because it's not technically part of the graph, but it helps us draw the graph. That middle line is super important. So I'm going to take my middle line, my sinusoidal axis. Sometimes it's called an average. Sometimes it's called a center line, sinusoidal axis. Like you sometimes on the exam, they say, what's the average of this function? They're looking for that sinusoidal axis. Y equals 3. Now, your A value tells you your amplitude, and your amplitude is the distance from your middle line to a max and to a min. So if our sinusoidal axis is at 3 and our amplitude is still 1, does it make sense that by shifting this up 3 units, you now would have a maximum at 4? And if I shifted this minimum value up 3 units, I now have a minimum at 2. So when we go and graph some of the patterns that you've started to notice, okay? You'll notice that I always mark my maximum and minimum with my amplitude. Now my maximum and minimum with my amplitude change because my d value moves up. So we're also going to always label our sinusoidal axes when your graph moves up and down. We still go along our x-axis and label the period. The period is still 2 pi because my b value is 1. I divide it into 4 equal sections. Pi, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. This is a sine graph. Sine graph starts in the middle, so now I have my starting point is there, not on my x-axis, not on my y-axis anymore, not at my origin, because it moved up 3 units. And what does a sine graph do? It starts in the middle going up, so then it'll go to maximum, then next ticky mark, back to the middle, then down to the minimum, then back to the middle. This is our new graph with at least one period. Okay, I'm ignoring the fact that the textbook said from 0 to 2 pi. I like at least one period instead. So you can circle 6 and 7.